Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving straight into a really raw, deeply personal, and honestly incredibly relatable journal entry in today's explainer. It's titled The Courage of Fluency, a Day 9 Transformation. Now listen, if you've ever tried to learn a new language or really anything that pushes you completely out of your elements, you are absolutely going to recognize yourself in this story. The author has been documenting their English learning journey, and day 9, well, it turned out to be an absolute watershed moment.
So I want you to hold this question in your mind for a second. What if fluency isn't actually about perfect grammar, but something way, way deeper? I mean, we're so conditioned to treat language learning like a math equation, right? Where vocabulary plus grammar rules equals fluency. But what happens when you have all the words in your head and you still just freeze? Today, we're going on this amazing emotional journey about overcoming the sheer, paralyzing fear of making mistakes in front of other people.
All right, Section 1, The Illusion of Fluency, Rethinking the Language Journey.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just 9 days prior to this journal entry, our authors started this challenge with a pretty straightforward goal: become confident in English. At the time, that day 1 mindset, they thought learning was purely mechanical. Just nail down the grammar, the vocabulary, the pronunciation, a very clinical textbook approach. But fast forward to day 9, and the author has this profound epiphany. They realize that learning a language is actually about changing who you are. Why? Because it literally forces you to face your fears every single day. It demands this entirely new level of vulnerability. For those first 8 days, the author really leaned heavily on what we can call the safe practice routine. Listening, speaking in isolation, recording themselves, learning new words, watching English videos. And hey, these are all fundamentally great practices, for sure, but they share one common trait. They're safe. They're private. The author realized they were using these fantastic tools as a shield. They were kind of hiding behind all this practice just to avoid the real, messy, completely unpredictable world of live communication.
Moving on to Section 2, Facing the Ultimate Fear, Dropping the Script. So this brings us to the real inciting incident of day 9. The author wakes up and makes this incredibly brave decision. It was time to stop hiding. Just think about the sheer, unadulterated vulnerability of this unscripted test. No notebook to reference, no perfectly constructed memorized sentences to fall back on, no second chances to re-record a voice memo until it sounded just right. It was just the author, their unfiltered thoughts, and the totally terrifying prospect of speaking out loud spontaneously. And, well, it was a disaster. I actually want to slow down here for a second because this cascading sequence of failure, it's something literally every single learner goes through. First, the author paused. Then, panic sets in, so they start repeating words. Because they're panicking, they completely forget their vocabulary. And ultimately, they just got stuck, stranded right in the middle of their own sentences. Their brain was simply moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, way, way faster than their mouth could possibly keep up. Right in the middle of that very public, very uncomfortable disaster, this familiar, agonizing frustration creeps in. It was the exact same frustration they felt way back on day 1, and it brought with it this whispering voice of doubt, which is captured perfectly in this quote, "Maybe you're not improving." It's that devastating internal critic that tells you all your hard work is for absolutely nothing just because you stumbled. I guarantee you, if you've ever learned a language, you have heard this exact whisper. Which brings us to Section 3, Redefining True Fluency, From Exam to Tool. And this brilliantly illustrates where the energy entirely shifts, because the author didn't actually listen to that whisper of doubt. They didn't stop.
And after a few agonizing minutes, a massive paradigm shift happened. They crossed over from treating language like an exam, where you're totally paralyzed by the fear of failing, obsessing over grammar, terrified of making a mistake, to treating language as a tool. They stopped thinking about the rules and just started thinking about connection. They were no longer being graded, they were simply expressing their thoughts. It definitely wasn't perfect, but it was natural.
So here is the absolute core epiphany of the entire Day 9 journal entry. The author completely redefines the very concept of their goal. Fluency is not speaking without mistakes. Let me say that one more time. Fluency is not speaking without mistakes. Fluency is speaking without fear. It's a psychological state of freedom, not some rigid metric of grammatical perfection. That realization alone is just worth its weight in gold.
All right, section 4, growth beyond the comfort zone, measuring real progress.
Once you redefine fluency as this huge psychological breakthrough, how do you actually, measure your progress? Well, the author started noticing these tangible, real-world data points. They realized they were understanding much more when listening. When speaking, the hesitation was significantly less, and crucially, their mistake recovery was so much faster. When they stumbled, they didn't freeze up, they bounced back. The big takeaway here is that real, sustainable progress isn't made of these giant, cinematic leaps. It's built from incredibly small, consistent victories. One conversation, one stumble, and one recovery at a time.
Now, as part of their daily routine, the author logged their new vocabulary words for Day 9. We've got courage, express, improvement, consistency, confidence. Notice how these aren't just random dictionary words. They perfectly, beautifully map to the profound emotional and psychological journey the author went through on the specific day. The language they're learning is literally reflecting the personal growth they're experiencing. And that brings us right to the thematic anchor of today's explainer. Growth begins where comfort ends. The author noted that this sentence just stayed with them all day long. Every single important improvement in their 9-day journey so far only happened when they were uncomfortable, nervous, scared, or even when they just wanted to quit. The profound secret they uncovered is that the days that feel the absolute hardest are almost always the days that change you the most. So, 9 days down. The journey is getting a lot harder, for sure, but like the author notes, it's also getting infinitely more exciting because tomorrow is day 10, and the author has teased that they're planning something even bigger, something specifically designed to push them even further outside of that comfort zone. And honestly, the best part, they openly admit they don't even know if they're ready, but they have the courage to do it anyway. Which leads me with a final thought for you. As the author's confidence builds and their challenges get bigger, what about you? Are you going to step outside your comfort zone today? Whether it's language learning or something else entirely, I challenge you to drop your script and just embrace the stumbles. If you found this explainer inspiring, please hit subscribe and join us for the next chapter of this incredible documented journey. We're going to see you tomorrow for day 10.